as they come in.
We're going to get some rabbit today. Itty bitty nuts today. We're going to raise some new feeding in. We've got Frankie and Williams and Dorfman, yes. Polito, Lynn, Mark, Cole, Abigail, Matt, Lily, Abby, Allison. Morning, everybody. Welcome back. Happy Monday. You will need your ceramic notebooks. If you don't have it yet, please grab that now. You can bring any of your. Welcome. I hope you enjoyed that beautiful weekend that we had. I mean, yesterday wasn't all that great, but Saturday, holy smokes. I hope you spent some good time outside on Saturday. I finally got to do some gardening, so I had to include this picture of this comedy duo from Japan because it's got flowers in it. I'm so happy to be amongst the flowers this weekend. Also, I really love that their fat little bellies are the vases that are holding the flowers. That's really cute. We'll eventually move into making a vase. Not today, though. Today, we're going to continue with the animal project. So we're going to talk about next steps on that. However, first, I do want to give you the big picture of what's happening this week. So if you take a peek up at the screen, this is what you can kind of expect for this week. So today, you're going to get a little bit of notes and the demo on how to put the head of your animal onto the body of your animal. And maybe you'll also start adding major features to your animal today, like maybe hips or legs or tails or something like that. But the main thing I'm looking for you to accomplish today is to get the head on the body. That would be a great step forward today. Tomorrow, there's going to be a little bit of notes and a demo on how to do faces. So if you're at all nervous about doing the face of your animal, I'm going to explain it. It's not as hard as you might think. And we'll talk about small details too, like horns and ears and claws and smaller things after the bigger things are accomplished. Wednesday, a little bit of notes and a demo on adding textures because animals have feathers or scales or fur, and we'll talk about how to add that. Also, remember, this has got to have an opening in it somewhere so it doesn't blow up, but also so it's functional. So it needs to have a lid so it can be a little jar that you can keep things in, or maybe it's going to have a hole so you can put a plant in it and grow a plant in it. So we'll be cutting a lid, and then ideally, what we're heading for is that this project will be done by Thursday, by the end of the school day on Thursday. People who are at home, you would potentially have an extra day to work on this into Friday because typically what I do is I try to have the project finished on a Thursday, but then the final video that you'll submit not due till the following day, till Friday. So it gives a little extra time if you need it. But this Friday also is weird. Again, just like last Friday was weird. This Friday is the Science MCA. How many people are going to be taking the Science MCA this Friday? I think it's freshmen and maybe sophomores. Is that right? Do I have that right? Okay, so maybe definitely one, two, okay, a handful of you are going to be taking it, right? So if you are one of the people that are doing the MCA this Friday, just one of the things I'm also hoping to do this Friday is to do the quiz on all of the notes that we've been taking so far. And it's an open notes quiz. You'll be able to use your notes that you've been writing down. And so for the people who would be doing the MCA on Friday, you would not have to take the quiz on Friday. You would be able to put that off and do that at a later time. I would keep the quiz open for you. So as we get closer to that, we'll review for the quiz. We'll talk about how that's going to work on Friday. But I do want to kind of have the quiz this week. I don't want to put it off till next week because this stuff is still fresh in your brain this week. Speaking of which, I'm going to ask you about some of your previous vocabulary words from ceramics. So if you have your notes in front of you, if you want to turn back to last week's notes, that would be awesome. Somebody shout out for me, and people at home, you can unmute and shout out too. What is the name of the kind of clay that we use in this class? Stoneware, thank you, yes. Somebody tell me, clay has plasticity, which is the ability to stretch and hold. Why does clay have plasticity? What's special about clay? It's made up of platelets that are flat. Yep, absolutely. What is the name for the machine that fires our pots up to the temperature where the clay becomes permanent? Kiln, yes. Somebody tell me, what is the name of the first firing that makes the pots permanent? Bisque firing, right. Somebody tell me, what is the name of the second firing that makes our pots all glossy and shiny and colorful? Glaze firing, yes, good. Somebody tell me, what temperature is the final firing? What is the final temperature that stoneware gets fired to, the hottest temperature? 2,100 degrees, or if you were to express it in ceramic terminology, how would you say that temperature? Cone 6, very good, yep. Somebody tell me, what is the first stage that our clay goes through? When it first comes out of that bin, it's real soft, it's kind of easy to work with, but kind of weak. What is that stage called? Plastic, right, the plastic stage. Somebody tell me, what is the second stage our clay goes through where it's dried out a little bit, but it's still really workable and you can do anything to the clay in that stage? Leather hard, yep, exactly. And so hopefully when we unwrap our animal body parts today, we'll hopefully find that they're either in the plastic stage or the leather hard stage. What is the third stage our clay goes through where there is no moisture left in that clay? It's totally dry, it's really fragile, it's ready to be fired. Bone dry, yes, exactly. And so we've got plastic, leather hard are the workable stages. Bone dry is bad news. If your clay is bone dry, you'll have to remake that piece that got bone dry. So fingers crossed, knock on wood, nobody has anything bone dry today because we're not done yet. Somebody tell me, in which of our two firings could your project blow up? The first one, the bisque firing, right. And what are the two things that could make your project blow up in the kiln? Water and air, and which one is worse? Water, absolutely. It'll absolutely blow it into smithereens, whereas an air explosion is more just like a little pop, and then usually we can take that piece and just pop it back on with some glaze. Good, good. I think those are kind of the highlights. Oh, I know, one other thing I want to make sure that you remember. What are the three things you have to do when you're joining two pieces of clay together? First, you score, which is roughing up both pieces so they're like Velcro. Then you add slip, which is the liquid glue, the liquid clay that makes the pieces sticky. And then finally you, starts with an M. Melt, right. So you blend the two pieces together so you can't, so an onlooker, like someone who's looking at your work, wouldn't necessarily know that that was two pieces. So it looks really smooth and seamless. Good, 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 good. Those are all really key things to know for the quiz. So make sure you have that in your notes. All right, so today we have a few little additional notes, maybe a little bit more on composition, a demo on adding body parts to your animal, and then work time. So, and you will have a progress picture due by 3 p.m. All right, so on the next clean page in your notebook, or perhaps underneath some previous notes, just so they're all in the same place, please get down these 3 additional terms. Term number 1 has 2 little bullet points underneath it. Make sure you get those bullet points as well, please. People at home, same. You should be having your notebook right now, jotting this down. right, if you haven't finished writing, keep writing. I'm going to start talking. So term number one is composition. This is a very common art term. A lot of times we think about it in terms of a painting or a drawing, but you have to think about composition in terms of a three-dimensional work of art. So I'm going to talk about two different ways to think about composition because you will have to make a choice between the two today when you add your head to the body of your creature. So a composition is the way the parts of an artwork are arranged. It's the decisions an artist makes about where to put things. So the two kinds of composition that you will be choosing between are static composition, where everything is in a line. Things are aligned horizontally, orderly. They lead our eye side to side, which I guess is left to right. So the way that this applies to your animal is if you decide to put the head in front of your animal's body and the tail behind the animal's body, so the body is in an alignment like this. See how everything is kind of like aligned left to right? That's a static composition, right? So everything is in a line and it's really orderly and it's really stable. The other type of composition is dynamic. A dynamic composition uses active circular movement to lead the eye around. So a way that you might use that, this isn't the best example of it, to be honest. Really good example. Maybe this little pig here. I put out a few examples on your tables here. I would ask you not to touch them or pick them up simply because of like the multiple germ touching thing, but just to look at. So see how this pig is curled in kind of a ball shape, like the head is curled to the front, the feet are curled to the front. So it's in more of a circular composition, and that's a dynamic composition. So it's not that one is better than the other. I want you to be aware of it so you can make a conscious choice. Are you going to make your animal in a static composition that's kind of all in a row? Or are you going to make your animal curled into a round composition and have it be a dynamic composition? Again, one is not better than the other. I just want you to make a conscious choice about which one you're going to do. Because today, you're going to be attaching that head. So you're going to be making a choice about where it goes. What we're really making here is a sculpture. It's going to be functional. You're going to be able to put stuff in it. But it's primarily a sculpture. So I wanted you to know the two different ways of making a sculpture. One is additive, where you're adding extra clay as needed. And you're going to be doing that today. You're going to be adding extra clay, perhaps to make hips or hooves or paws or tails. And so right now we're working in an additive way. We're adding more clay to get the parts that we want. Eventually, you're also probably going to be doing some subtractive sculpture, which means carving, similar to what an artist that works with stone would do, like chiseling away, except we're not going to chisel, we're going to carve. So to get smaller details, we might do some subtractive sculpture. So the names really make sense, right? Additive sculpture is where you add more to make the sculpture. Subtractive is where you carve it away. So very sensible terminology there. So those are some words you're going to hear me using and words I want you to be aware of today and for the remainder of the unit. So take a look up at the screen. I wanted to clarify even further the difference between a static composition and a dynamic composition. So the kitty cat right here, the head is facing forward. The head is definitely in front of the body. The tail does curl around, but still the body is pretty much in a straight line. So that is a static composition where everything is kind of aligned in a row. The drawing of the kitty, it's not a sculpture, I know, but it's, you know, it could still be inspiration. That drawing of the cat's neck and head are curved, the body is curved, the hip is really all we see. There's not even any like legs that we can see there. So that's the advantage of doing a curved dynamic composition is sometimes you can like totally eliminate certain body parts because they won't even show because the body is curved. So that's an example of a dynamic composition where the cat's body is curled in a little ball, all snugly as it's sleeping. Here we have, every time I see this picture, it makes me laugh. It looks like that horse is dead, but it's not. It's just sleeping. That's how they sleep, apparently. So this would be an example of probably not a very good composition. It's not even really a good static composition. It's just a funny picture of a sleeping horse. But that is a good example. The other horse that's laying down with its head turned is a good example of a dynamic composition. So if you're making an animal that has maybe you wanted to have an upright head, you can still do the static or dynamic composition like that little baby horse. So Thursday, you guys said you wanted to see me make a dragon. So I looked for a bunch of dragon pictures. And of all the dragon pictures that I found, I just Googled dragon sculptures because I felt like that would help me as I'm making my own dragon sculpture. And pretty much all the dragon sculptures I found, the body was kind of almost like a combination of static and dynamic. So here you see the head is just slightly curved, the tail is curved. Same thing there, the head is slightly curved, the tail is curved. The top one is probably the most static composition where the body is mainly in a line except that tail. And in all these sculptures, you can tell that all these artists really thought about how to make that tail really secure. They made the tail touching the body. And the more places it touches the body, the stronger it's going to be. So that's a good lesson to take from these images. If you have an animal with a long tail or a long neck or long legs, let those long features kind of curl back and touch against the body. They'll just be so much more strong and stable. So that's something to take in mind. So those are all kind of like hybrid compositions. They're kind of static, they're kind of dynamic. These compositions here are much more dynamic. And this is kind of what I want to try and do. I want to try and make my animal's body really curled up because I think that's just very sweet and very snuggly. So that's what I'm going to attempt in my demo today. So these are some dynamic composition dragons. So I'm going to start that now. I'm going to have you guys come gather around table 9 so I can start talking about putting body parts on. I'm going to bring my computer over for the people who are at home. Let's see, Saif, since you're closest to the door, will you flip on the lights, please? I'm going to put, no, I'm not going to put that up yet. I'm going to put my picture of my dragon up there. There we go. That's what I want to look at as I'm working. Come on over to table 9. And I'm going to steal this stool and pin this here. All right, so if I have this here, can you still see around my computer? Okay, cool. So first thing that I have to do here today is pull the head out of the plastic bag where I had it and the body out of the plastic bag. And so if you remember from Thursday, what we did was we slipped and scored the 2 halves of your pinch pot together, wrapped a coil around, melded. If you didn't do that yet, definitely that's your first task for today. Slip and score the 2 pinch pots together and meld. Then the other thing I had you do on Thursday, and some of you got this far and maybe some of you didn't, I had you start to shape the body. And the thing I had you use to start shaping, if you're at home, I had you get a plastic card and we used that to do some scraping and shaping and compressing. Maybe you pushed areas in to make eye sockets. Maybe you curved the body to start making it look more like your creature. You'll be doing more shaping as we go, but just to begin, getting that correct shape is important. Then I have to start deciding how is this animal going to come together. So if I had a static composition, maybe I would make the head be right in front of the animal, so its body was stretched out along a line. But I kind of want to do this curled dragon, so I'm going to make the head be kind of doubled back, curled up against the body. And then there'll be hips, there'll be claws, there'll be a tail that wraps around too. This is going to be kind of a big pinch pot animal, but that's okay. I'm in it to win it now. So these are my body parts that are going to be coming together. So I'm going to grab some additional clay. I'm going to bring this whole bag over here to help it out. So if I'm happy with the shape of my head and the shape of my body, my next step is to begin putting my pieces together, attaching the head to the body. Now, if I was going to do a static composition, and some of you are maybe going to do this, I could just put the head right on the body. I could slip and score it on, meld it, and connect it. Because I'm going to be putting my head kind of curved like that, I'm going to need to add a neck. So there's a whole bunch of space here that's going to have to be filled in with neck.
So I'm going to start as though I was going to put it on like that, because some of you will be doing this. Some of you will have the head right up against the body. So wherever they're going to connect, I do need to cut a hole. So if you're at home, you have a toothpick or you have paper clips that you can use to cut a little hole about the size of a nickel, wherever that head is going to be joined, and then cut a corresponding hole in the head. So this clay is a little bit, actually it's really nice. It's leather hard. So I was lucky with that. People who are here, you have a needle tool to cut that hole, to cut those openings. So now if this was going to be where the head was going to be put on, see how those holes align really nicely? So the air that's trapped inside the head is going to pass into the body, and then eventually we'll cut a hole in the body. Not today, but eventually all that air will be able to escape, and it will not blow up in the kiln. I forgot to grab a fork. Ruth, right behind you are some yellow buckets. Would you pass me a fork, please? Gracias. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so if I was going to put the head on like this, and again, I'm going to eventually put a neck on here, but I'm just going to model what I would do if this was my next step. I would score heavily around both connection points. I'm going to hold this up so you guys over here can see. So score, score, score. And then same thing around the head, score, score, score. I need my slip right here. So I would put slip on both of those areas. I would stick the head on there, and then I would roll a coil of clay and use that to melt. So that would give me a really stumpy neck. And some of your animals will not have much of a neck, and so that would work just fine. But I want my animal to have a little bit more of a curve. So that means there's all this space there that needs to be filled in by a neck. So I need some extra clay. So I'm going to grab a little extra bit of clay. It's such a small amount, I'm not even going to wedge it. I'm just going to pack it back and forth in my hands a little bit. And because I also need this neck to be hollow, it can't be a solid, like sealed up chunk of clay, because air needs to pass between the head to the body. So I'm just going to make basically another pinch pot, except I'm going to poke my thumb right through it. And then I'm going to pinch and create a tube. And that tube is going to become my neck. So now, and it's almost like a pinch pot, right? It's wider at the top than it is at the bottom. So I'm going to have that wider side be what's attached to the body. And oh, look at this beautiful slip that I have here today. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So appetizing looking. So I'm kind of skipping a step. I'm working smarter, not harder. I'm dipping the fork in the slip and scoring and slipping simultaneously. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the neck piece that I'm adding on, and putting that neck piece on the body. And I'm kind of going to meld that neck onto the body. Hold it up so you guys who are in the back can see. So I also can wrap an extra coil of clay around this connection point, and I probably will. I'm just kind of getting the bulk of it connected right now. I'm going to curve that neck because it's got to connect to the head of my animal, which I want to be curled back toward the body. Okay, so now if I were to put it on like that, it's not quite in the right alignment that I need. So I'm going to continue to move it and shape it and make it bend to my will. Maybe I will end up cutting away a portion of the neck so that when I put the head on there, it's more curved. Okay, so that alignment is a little bit better. Still pretty rough, but it'll get there. I have some faith. So again, I'm going to score and slip the head where the neck is going to connect. This neck is really plastic right now. It's really soft and flimsy, which could be good. Just going to make sure that hole is really open. It's also going to mean that it's not going to have a lot of strength to it. So it's good in that I can now like bend and shape the neck, even though the head is attached there. There's a little spot that's opening up right here and breaking right there. So I'm going to patch that with a little bit of additional clay, like a Band-Aid, and I'm going to blend it back and forth from the neck onto the head. And so it's just going to be a little bit of working with the clay now to get it to be in the right shape, have the right kind of curve, so there's no weird little bumps in it. If there's a weird little bump, like there's kind of a dimple right here that I don't really want. So whenever I'm putting clay on clay and there's no way for the air to escape between the clay, I would patch it with a little bit of extra scoring and slipping. Okay, and I'm going to use my card. People who are here, you have a steel scraper to use for this. I'm going to use that to create a nice smooth transition from the body of my creature onto the head. Okay, so now I have the head pretty well attached to the body. And in theory, I don't know this for sure yet. I won't know until I open it back up and cut a hole in the back. But in theory, the air can pass between the head and the body now. I just really like using this card to really smooth and streamline that connection. I spend a lot of time doing that. Okay, so that's as far as I want everybody to try and get today. Get that head scored, slipped, wrap that extra coil around and meld. But if you have more time, you can start adding other major body parts. Like if you look on the screen, look at those big hips on my dragon, right? He's got some big old hips. So I am going to consider adding a lot of extra clay for these hips right here where the hips would go. Maybe I won't add claws and feet because they aren't visible, or maybe I'll decide that I want a little hint of claw to be like underneath the head, kind of like this chameleon. You can see that there's like the hands are kind of folded underneath the head, so it looks like it's sleeping. But there's not really the whole arm that you see there, or this is a honey badger. So he's eating a snake. Or he's eating a snake. And so the arms go under the head, so their arms really aren't emphasized too much. You don't have to show a lot of those arms if you put them underneath the head. So I'll decide about the legs later. Right now I'm just dealing with hips. Your animal might have big haunches, big hips that you want to add. It might not. It really just depends on what kind of animal you have. So I am going to make these hips by making a little pinch pot. And I'm going to put one pinch pot on one side to make one hip. And then the other pinch pot is going to go on the other side to make the other hip. You could also do this to add a big tail if your animal has a big weighty tail, like an alligator tail, or what would be another animal that has a big tail? A whale, maybe. So any animal that has a big tail, you can add some extra clay today too. But that extra clay would need to be hollow. So that's why I made pinch pots, because anything that's going to be thicker, solid of an inch, it's too risky that there could be air trapped inside there. But also, what problem will I have if I slip and score those hips on there just like that? There's going to be air in there too. Yep. So easy solution. If you're going to be attaching anything where the air is going to be trapped, just cut a little hole. So he's got a hole in his hip there and a hole in his hip there. And it doesn't have to be pretty because it's not going to be seen. So now I can score and slip this little pinch pot hip, and I'm going to score and slip around that little hole there so that this hip can be joined on. So I get the bulk of the hip. I'll turn it so you guys over here can see. I get the bulk of it without the thickness of it. So it looks like the body is bulging out there. Same thing on the other side. I'm going to add the hip on the other side too, scoring and slipping around the whole thing. Probably a better way for me to have gone about the scoring and slipping is to hold it up and draw a circle around it, like trace around it, so I know exactly where the score marks need to go. I'm just scoring and slipping a really large surface area, so I know that I'm going to be getting all the spots that are going to be touching. And then that hip goes on there. And if you need some extra clay for melding, it's never a bad idea to just roll a little coil around. And you can use that extra coil for melding, or you can meld the clay of the actual object that you joined on. So now my little dragon has some hips. And eventually, maybe tomorrow, I'll add some legs underneath there. I'm going to do a tail today, and I'm going to do all the fun stuff like the ears and the horns and the face and everything tomorrow. So don't worry about tiny details yet. Just kind of take a look at those big features today. What are the big features that you could possibly do? So if I was to do a tail, here's another way that you can make body parts and make them hollow. First, just start by making the piece solid. Okay, so maybe this might be the tail of my creature. It's bigger where it touches the body. So I'm just going to flatten that out, make it bigger. So that tail, I like the idea of it being dynamic. So I'm going to make the tail curve inward, and it'll touch against maybe under the head or on the body or something like that. So a way that I can make this hollow inside is I can, what's a good tool for the job? I can take, actually, I'm going to attach this tail solid first, and then I'll show you how I would make it hollow. So I just scored and slipped where the tail is going to go onto the body. I'm melding now, blending it upward. I feel like I want a little additional clay because it's kind of an abrupt change from the big fat body to that little tail. So I'm going to meld an additional coil of clay that takes the thickness of the body down a little bit more gently into the thickness of the tail. Okay, so that's what I just added there. And then this, maybe I'll curl this around. I'll kind of figure out where this is going to get attached in a little bit. I'm just going to place it right there for now. But to make this hollow, what I can do is flip this upside down. And it would be awesome if I had a towel. Could you grab me a towel from that pile back there, from the garbage can? People at home, I think I told you that you should have a towel at home. People who are here, I've got a ton of towels. Thank you so much. And the reason you are gonna maybe want a towel for this project is you can flip it over onto that towel and it helps cushion it so it doesn't flatten out on the back side. So now I can actually do melding on all sides. So it really is truly strong. If you're just melding the sides you see, that might not be strong enough to be able to get all of the support that you need. So I'm finishing up melding the neck because there were some kind of gaps there. But with this tail, I said I was going to hollow out the tail. So what I can do is I can take a popsicle stick and kind of scoop out what are the thickest parts of my creature. People who are here, you have ribbon tools. This is a carving tool right here. So you can scoop out and hollow out those areas that you didn't attach hollow, but you just need them thinned out a little bit. And so it looks weird on the bottom, but once I flip it back over and set it on its tray, nobody knows that it's hollowed out and it's less likely to blow up. So that's a good thing. So, so those are some major features. I better attach this tail on here because if I don't, it's just going to be really fragile. It's just going to keep moving. So I'm going to score and slip. And this is an instance where I wouldn't meld because if I meld that tip of that tail in there, it'll just disappear, right? And I want that tail to look distinct from the hip that it's sitting on. So that I'm just scoring and slipping. I'll probably add a spike or something on the end of the tail, but that's a smaller detail for another day. So that's a lot of information. That's a lot of steps for you to get to today. So your final step would be to snap a photo of however far you get for today. I'm not insisting that you get to big features. Definitely get your head on today. If you get to other big features, great. Then take a wet sponge, just lightly hydrate all the surfaces, and just slide the whole thing after you've taken your photo for today. Slide the whole thing into your bag. Wrap it up tight and keep it like that for tomorrow. Okay? People who are here in person, what questions do you have about any of that? I'm going to leave the steps up on the screen so you have that as a reference point. People who are at home, stay on the line. I'm going to chat with you next. Okay. Yes, go ahead. I do need to write this fast chat though, so hang tight just a second. Oh, thank you so much. Sure. And sometimes I leave this area a little bit messy, so sorry about that. I promise I'll come back and clean it. All right, people at home, bear with me for just a minute here. And it is 10:31. There you go, sir. Yeah. Okay. So I need to get the next slide up for these guys. So hang on just a moment. And where is my cursor? There we go. Like open it up. All right, the steps I just demoed are now up on the screen, so you have that as reference. Okay, attendance. Ooh, all right. Unpin myself. I'm gonna stop recording.